Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and today we've got the DM test drive of the 2022 Mark 8 Volkswagen Golf GTI. Whole lot of hype around this model, and rightfully so, because the GTI has always represented almost the perfect car under $50,000. You've got practicality, you've got efficiency, you've got fun driving, you've got all the safety and tech features you could want in a car at this price point. Good looks. It's almost the 911 for the everyday man. And therefore, when Volkswagen decides to come out with a new generation, they have a lot to not screw up. And that's kind of the main question of the car today is, did they screw it up? Or is the GTI still one of the most recommendable cars on the market? A little bit of a walk around, taking a look at everything. The interesting thing is this is actually a European car. So you'll notice a few differences between what we're actually going to see on the North American shores and this car. Different stickers, maybe a few different subtle design elements, and this one's got a particulate filter that may actually end up affecting the overall horsepower numbers once we get the car here in the States. But the core elements of the vehicle should be the same. Obviously the interior, the features, the driving dynamics should all be pretty similar to what we are going to expect. Now we have shot a review of the Harman Kardon audio system in here, as well as done a highway fuel economy test. So if you're interested in either of those, be sure to check those out. Backseat is a plenty good place to be. You got two little phone pockets. I like that manufacturers are starting to do that. You got power points back here, some climate controls, a flip down armrest. A good amount of knee room. I'm a 5'10" person, and I have headroom, knee room, arm room. I wouldn't want to be back here for maybe 5 hours, but plenty decent place to be for taking a little trip. And obviously the seats fold down, make for a great load surface. That's the great thing about hatchbacks, is getting all this sort of space. This has a center pass-through as well. Gotta love the practicality of the Golf. Then getting up into the front, graded with quite a few differences from the Mark 7. It's a both more mature and more tech and sort of evolved look altogether. And it's different. That's the main thing for me, is it's just different. I think you're going to see that echoed a lot throughout this review. Is if you're really used to the Mark 6 and Mark 7 GTIs, this one's going to have a few turnoffs. But if you're someone getting into a Golf for the first time, you might be really impressed by some of the things going on in here. See the engine start stop button flashing for us. An unconventional place there, as well as this little finger shifter, similar to what you see in the 992 911. You're greeted with this array of screens. Big digital display up front that you can adjust around, make look different. There's going to be a few screens here that would have navigation on there, but we don't have navigation for this car because it is a Euro spec. And then you have this giant screen here. I mean, relatively, I suppose it's not giant given the other screens we see in many other vehicles, but for this car and compared to what we've worked with before, it's got a lot going on. You can see some weird yellow color right now. That's because we were playing around with it, but let's, come on, it doesn't want to slide. Look at this. Does it not? It slides this way. There we go. Now it'll slide there. That's the main thing with this whole tech suite is, stop playing music. Didn't I say to stop? There's so many little annoyances in the usability. So many settings are buried within so many screens, and the haptic buttons don't feel natural. There's a slight delay when you press between when things actually happen and when you press the button. The intention is good. Some of the things work pretty darn well. I like having wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, but the intuition that some other vehicles have is lacking here, and I think that crops up and sort of detracts from the experience. Let's actually hop out on the road here before the semi-truck gets out of here. It would take us a little bit extra time. Steering wheel seems a little large in this car. I don't know if it's any larger. I'd like to get it back to back with a Mark 7 and measure the diameter, see if it's any bigger, but overall, you can hop in this and drive it, which is good for a car because that's its main purpose. Climate controls buried away. You got to click. Well, you can click a few different things. You can hit Clima, you can click this little button there. You can put a few shortcuts on the screen. A lot of glare on the screen as well. I'm seeing a reflection of myself in this screen. That's not something I like to see. A lot of fingerprints as well, but you do have some climate controls, and you can use these haptic buttons to adjust your temperature here. So if you just leave the thing on auto, you should be able to kind of adjust the temperature without changing your screen, which is good. What you can't do is change tracks without changing the screen. So say, for example, I had my navigation going here, Android Auto or something, and my passenger, which this has happened very recently, passenger wants to switch radio stations, they'll actually have to go home and then radio. So that's 2 clicks, and then wait for it to load, change their radio station, and then I'll have to go back to Android Auto to see my navigation. Really frustrating that manufacturers are going away from just having a physical control in the center for tracks. But you do have some volume adjustments right here, and they're a bit easier to use than the haptic ones in the new Hyundai products. So driving, at the end of the day, that's what you all care about with the GTI, right? How is it to drive? Great, the powertrain's awesome. The dual clutch transmission is crisp and wonderful. No big surprises there. This one is running some aftermarket Bridgestone tires that are very loud and very, very grippy. So it's hard to get an accurate representation of what this car will really be like on its factory all seasons. But I can tell you, with some aftermarket tires like this, it has an immense amount of grip. Great communication, very fun to throw around. Let's switch the drive mode from comfort to sport. Manually shift down. Oh, that truck's going through. That's not something you see very often. First gear. Whoops. Will hold gears for you if I let it hit the red line. Oh no, it won't. That's surprising. I thought it did. So, Moran, if you're watching, the car does not hold gears for you, even in sport and manual mode. That's surprising. Ah, but the chassis is so communicative. It really is still one of the best driving experiences. Pure, I don't know if I want to say pure, but it's a very communicative driving experience, especially for $30,000. And the amount of power you're getting now with this new engine it's getting to the point where it's not just like, oh, it's fun to ring out. It's now getting to the point where it's like, ooh, this gets me up to speed really quick. A small downside is that the engine and powertrain is so smooth, you don't really get much joy from ringing it out. You kind of look down, you're like, oh wow, I'm doing 80. That happened. It doesn't take a whole bunch to get there. It's not like a Miata where you're really experiencing and enjoying the entire rev range before you go to shift. But look at those quick shifts. And dive into this corner, incredibly flat, pull out. I have no doubt that this would be the best GTI to date to have on track. I think they really dialed that in. But for street driving, I do think we're missing a bit of character that the Mark 6, Mark 7, Mark 5 even, all of those cars had a degree of character that doesn't quite seem to be there with the Mark 8. And we are seeing that from cars like the Hyundai Veloster N, even the Civic Type R, which is a car that I don't know if people who watch my channel regularly know I'm actually not a huge fan of the Civic Type R, but and obviously that one's much more expensive than this car, but when we're talking driving character, the Type R does have significantly more character than this does. The GTI has always been kind of the mature man, the businessman's hot hatch. And I do think that still rings true, but I think some will be turned off by this tech suite, by some of the haptic controls. And I don't think you're getting as playful of an experience in here as previous GTI owners might have come to expect. Obviously, we have a crazy amount of grip, but how much of that is attributed to these ultra-high performance cheater tires? Who's to say? engine noise isn't bad. The cool thing is let's get back into comfort drive mode. Using individual mode, you can actually change how much engine sound you hear. So you can customize just about everything, even on the go. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I think 15 different suspension settings, which I think is a bit much, but in theory you can fine-tune your suspension exactly how you want it. Different steering controls, drive modes, and then engine sound right here. You can actually change the amount of engine sound you get in your individual mode. So I think that's nice. You can kind of build a sport mode for yourself without much of that fake engine noise. I'm still in this. Oh, because there we go. Cruising here on the highway. As I said, we did do a highway fuel economy test where we got 38 miles per gallon. I suspect that number would jump up 1 or 2 with stock all-season tires, but still a great number for the amount of power and the amount of fun you're getting. Even on this downhill section, quite a bit of highway here, you still hear some engine sound. If I were to downshift, it almost gets quieter when it's a little higher up, so there's just a weird bit of drone. Hopefully they could do something with that, get that away. But yeah, just not a bad car on the highway, but probably not my favorite highway cruiser in this class. Something like a Mazda 3 is going to do better. Would I buy the new Mark 8 GTI? The answer to that is no. And that's a sad answer for me, because I seriously considered buying a Mark 7 GTI. It was one of my top 3 new car choices at any given time. Anyone asked, you know, what's one of your favorite cars? It's not like a crazy supercar. Oh, GTI. Great car. Perfect car for really anybody. Anyone would enjoy driving a GTI. And I still think a good amount of the driving enjoyment is there with this model. It's faster, it's more capable, but that doesn't necessarily translate into daily driving enjoyment, which is what made the Mark 7 so darn appealing, and previous GTIs. This infotainment system turns me off, the haptic controls turn me off, the gauge cluster. It's not a pure driving experience the way previous GTIs were. And for that, my money would be going to something else in the hatchback game. What is that? I don't necessarily know. I mean, the Veloster N's much cheaper inside, much more juvenile, basic, even the driving experience, but it is more fun. There's the Mazda 3 Turbo, though, that I think is a little bit better of an option for that kind of mature buyer who wants something sporty and hatchy. So that would be a really great comparison, this versus the Mazda 3 Turbo. I think this would be better on track. I think I'd rather have the Mazda 3 for daily driving duties. All right. And maybe my expectations were just a little bit too high, but hey, you set the bar really high for yourself when you've spent so many years at the top. So thank you all so much for watching. If you want to see more on the new GTI, check the links in the description. We'll be sure to give some more driving impressions and feedback once we get an actual North American spec car. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.